Hey chess friends, welcome to a new video. Sometimes in a chess game we can confine some enemy piece in a section of the board, but we cannot capture, for some reason we cannot capture that piece. So how do we play, or how can we win when we have something like that in our games? Well, today we're going to study a masterpiece by world champion Capablanca, where he won in a situation like this. So if you like the idea of understanding, analyzing this great masterpiece by Capablanca about how to win when you trap an enemy piece, stay there, watch and think. Winter is playing as white and Capablanca as black in 1919. We have the game with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, and knight f6. We have 4 knights on the board. In this position the main line is bishop b5. Also there are some moves, for example d4 is also a good option. I have seen this line with g3 also playable, not particularly strong but also playable. And there is this line with bishop c4 that I have seen very often in games, and we need to say that after bishop c4 there is this line with knight takes e4, and let me move it on the board, knight takes and then d5, and the idea is that black is going to get the piece back, and the theory states that in this position black has at least a balanced game. So what we can say here is that in 4 knights this bishop c4, this common popular bishop c4, is probably not that strong. Black can usually get a balanced middle game. So let's see the game. Bishop b5 and then bishop b4, that's the main line. Then white castles, black castles, and in this position Winter plays bishop takes c6. The main line in this at this position, at this moment, is d3, and after d3 black can still continue playing symmetrically with d6, and after bishop g5 now white is threatening ideas like knight d5, creating threats here on the pin, and also looking at the bishop. Notice that the defender of the bishop is the knight, so white could be threatening removing the defender and then take the bishop. So this position is a little complicated for black. They need to play something like bishop takes knight, or maybe knight e7 is another very interesting move at this point. If black wants to continue playing symmetrically with, for example, bishop g4, then this is not good. Playing symmetrically is fine as long as there are no threats. It's probably acceptable. But the problem is that when there are threats, like this knight d5, it's not that good, because if we continue playing symmetrically we could both have threats, but it's always going to be the turn for white. So it's like we both have threats, but he's always moving. So in general it's not a good idea. So we can play symmetrically as long as there are no threats. When the threats appear on the board, better we take care of the threats. So bishop g4 is not very good. White can play here knight d5 with the threats here destroying the pawn structure in the king side, and also the threat over, as we said, bishop takes knight and the bishop on b4. White, black can still play knight d4, but then bishop c4, still taking the bishop on b4, and after bishop c5, now this nice move queen d2, bringing the queen to the king side after this nice trade here. If black continues playing symmetrically, then we have bishop takes, and after bishop takes, black is winning, white is winning the game with this 4 moves sequence with knight e7, and white has mate in 3 here. You can pause the video if you want to try to find it. I will say it right now. White plays here bishop takes pawn, queen check, and queen f6, and that's mate. So in this position, after bishop g5 we cannot continue playing symmetrically, as we said. Bishop takes knight or knight e7 are the best moves. And also in the game instead of playing d3, which is the main line and is all that line we started, Winter plays here bishop takes knight, which is not the best here. Kappa takes with d. About this kind of captures, I have seen very often the question, what is the right way to capture here? And when they capture with b, why didn't they capture with d? And when they capture with d, why not with b? I think about these captures here, we need to understand what we are getting with both moves. When we capture with d, we are not getting too much center, but we are developing our bishop, so we are getting a tempo in development, and also we are clearing the line over here for the queen. When we capture with b, we are bringing pawns towards the center, so we are getting better control in the center, and half open file here for the rook. So summing up, if we capture with d, we get development. If we capture with b, we get center. In every position, we need to take decisions according the situation we have on the board. So this time he captured with d because he wants to prioritize development, and then white plays d3. Notice that knight takes pawn is not really getting too much because black can just play rook e8, attacking the knight and also the pawn. So at this point, white plays d3, and now white is taking the pawn on e5. So Kappa plays here bishop d6, and then bishop g5. The pin is always a little annoying, although this time it's not going to be too strong, probably this move. Black can play here h6, and white has to take a decision here, what to do, trade, go back, or go to h4. In general, bishop h4 is good enough, but notice that in this position here, g5 is playable. It's very playable for black. The problem with g5, as you know, is that we are weakening a little the king side, but the center is more or less closed here. It seems like it's under control for black here, so it's playable. And also another problem with g5 is the sacrifice here on g5, but the sacrifice this time is not so strong because we have the bishop here, so we can play bishop e7, knight h7 in the next move, and the king is very well here, and we have a piece up. Of course, white has a couple of pawns, but still is better for black. So after bishop h4, g5 is very well, it's playable, but Kappa just plays here c5. The idea with c5 is that he's controlling very well the center here, avoiding son d4, but also he's like preparing some kind of trick here, because now he's weakening this square d5, so it's very tempting to play here knight d5, putting a lot of pressure here on the knight. So knight d5, and then we have g5. Notice that at this point white cannot sacrifice here, because if they take, then there is this move, this in between, and if white takes, then there is a capture here. So black is very well with a piece up, and there's no attack here. The attack is gone. So g5, and Winter has to trade on f6. Queen takes f6. The bishop has to go back. Then bishop g4, just developing the bishop, and then a3. At this point, it is black to move. I would like you to try to find the move Capablanca played in this position. I'm going to say it right now. The move he plays here is this strong, interesting bishop takes f3. After queen takes queen, pawn takes queen. The position seems to be very normal, very balanced, but there is a big problem in white's position. And the problem is this bishop here on g3 is completely confined on this section of the board. Notice that it's not the same when we have these pawns like this, when we have the pawns on g2 and f2. Because when this pawn is like here on g2, white can still play f3 and they can move the bishop. They can find a way to make the bishop work fine. But as they have double pawns here, this pawn cannot move, and because of that, this pawn cannot move either. So the bishop is going to be confined there for a long time. So that's probably the main theme we can study, or we should study in this game. How Capablanca managed this situation when white has like a piece down here in this section of the board. What he's going to do here is he's going to play in the other side. He's going to play in the queen side, because from the mirror to the right, black has a piece up. So what he's going to do is that he's going to open lines, he's going to create weaknesses over there, because he has a bishop up in that side of the board. Let's see what happened here. Black plays f6, protecting, making sure there's no problem here, creating a very solid position here with these pawns. White plays king g2, and then we have a5, the plan we were saying. a4, trying to stop a little, but then king f7, and then rook h1. And this is also a very special moment of this game. Winter was still in time to save the game here. White plays here rook h1, but actually there was a very nice plan. I found this plan in the book My Great Predecessors by Kasparov. He analyzes this masterpiece, and he talks about this beautiful line where, according to his analysis and also according to what we're going to see on the board, white could hold the position with a solid on also a little passive defense, but they could hold, and probably they could get, almost for sure they could get a draw. So the idea here, Kasparov's idea here, was to play c4. Black could still continue playing in the queen side with c6, then rook c1, then rook b8, b3, b5, with the regular plan of working in the queen side, but then rook c3. The idea is that they are going to protect this pawn with the rook over the side. At some point black is going to open, but they are going to protect this pawn very well with the other rook as well. So let's say rook b6, then white can bring the king, and after the trade and rook b8, then we have this strong, little passive but good enough move, rook a3. Then white is protecting this pawn very well, and there's no a clear plan for black to make progress in this position. This is some kind of fortress here, and almost for sure white is going to get a draw here. Notice that the bishop is still very bad, but if we look at black's bishop, it's also very bad. The bishop won't be able to cross to the other side of the board because of all these pawns in dark squares. Also, we need to say that a move like rook b1, which looks good, is not working, because at some point black can play rook b4, and there is a pin on the file, so this pawn is going to be hanging. So let's say something like king e6, and then rook b4, and then they are going to capture this pawn because this rook is unprotected. There's no way to avoid that. So in this position, after king f7, it seems like c4 was still a very interesting option to play passively, but probably getting a draw with this move. So Winter didn't play in that way. He tried rook h1 here, and then we have king e6, then h4, trying to counterplay a little over the h file, but Kappa continues with his plan, rook b8, there is a trade, and then b3. Black continues with c6, and then rook a2. Notice that Winter never really got the 7th rank, even when he could. But something interesting here is that there's nothing in the 7th rank. So this square is very well controlled here. Also, there are no pawns over there. Everything is fine. I mean controlled here by black pieces. So black is going to continue with the plan, and the rook in the 7th rank is not doing too much. That's probably the reason why Winter never got the rook in h7. So here we have rook a2, and then b5, the plan we set. Rook from h, a1, and then c4. The plan is to open lines and create weaknesses over there. If we can do that, then we should be able to win because we have a piece up on this side of the board. So there is a trade. There is another trade here on b3. White takes on b3. Notice that taking on a5 is not a good idea. After rook takes a5, it is black to move here, and black is winning. You pause the video if you want. I will say it now. The way to win is by playing rook takes rook and then b2. No one can stop this pawn. So after c takes b3, white just recaptures, and then rook takes b5, very normal. But notice that now there are some weaknesses over here. So rook a4, rook takes pawn, and then d4. Well, if black takes here on a5, then we can just trade, and then let's see it on the board. We trade, and then we take on d3. And this position is completely winning for black. Notice they have a pawn up, and we could say they also have a bishop up here. So there's no problem here for black in this line. That's why they play d4, because they still hope to trade the bad bishop for black bishop. But no, Capa didn't give him any opportunity. Capablanca played here rook b5, trying to protect the central pawn, also protecting the pawn on a5. After rook c4, now there is this nice move, rook b4, rook takes c6. Well, if white trades here, bishop takes. This is very well still. So rook takes c6, and then rook takes d4. In this position, Winter resigned. Notice that black has a pawn up here, and one more time we can say there is a bishop up. Of course, this pawn is going to advance, and we have two rooks and a bishop to guard and support that pawn. So it's going to be winning for black, even more when there is a master like Capablanca playing as black here. And one more time, notice the bishop. The whole game was confined here on g3 in the king side. So one of my favorite moments in this game is here at this point here, when it is black to move, and Capa saw the possibility to trap this bishop on g3 after these trades, and then he decides to trade and stay in this nice position. As we could see, there was some way to probably save not to lose the game, but it was very complicated for white. It was very passive, and it's not easy to find it in a game. Also, it's very well for black, I mean for us, to play something like this where we know we are either winning, or in the worst case, assuming white plays very well, they can get a draw. So it's like we are playing for two results. We either win or get a draw. So in general, that kind of positions are very nice. We know we are not losing because he has the bishop down here. So this is probably one of my favorite moments of this game, when he decided to create the problem, the web for this bishop, and then he could play in the queen side. So this is the video I wanted to show you today. I hope you have enjoyed it. If it was like that, don't forget to give me some like. Also, if you have any question or some analysis or variation about any particular moment of this amazing game, feel free to write it in the comments. Remember, you're never a loser until you quit trying. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and see you in the next.